Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the new Gotham studio. It's not much of a studio. We just moved in. I just got everything set up here. And I will give you a recap of the last 2 days of the Croatia Zagreb Grand Chess Tour. But first, take a look. There's not a lot here, but there is a lot of space. There is a lot of space. And I look forward to setting all this up. And there might be an echo. I can hear an echo here, so I'm going to talk kind of quietly, even though I have noise suppression on, but growing pains. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we've got something to talk about, okay? And this is what we have to talk about. Garry Kasparov came back to play some chess, and for the first 3 days of this event, it was Ivan Šarić who was competing in the rapid portion. And so Garry comes, and he's now going to play Blitz. There are 10 players. They play each other once, so it's 9 rounds both days, 18 rounds. Now, the first game, he has the black pieces versus Jordan van Forest. And we have a Sicilian defense, a Najdorf, and this is something that Garry has played many, many times in his career. Bishop to g5, e6, f4, this is a critical line. And after queen c7, Jordan takes on f6 and plays queen out to f3. Now, this position is super imbalanced. Black has the bishop pair, but a very damaged structure. Probably not going to castle this way. White is probably going to go long. Probably play f5, g3, g4, h4. Blow you off the board. Now, board opens up very quickly. All of that happens. We have this f5 move. And queen c5 is played. And Garry's idea here is that he wants to remove his rook off of the line here, and then put his queen in the center of the board. But after rook f1, all of white's pieces are perfectly placed. And the question is basically, when is white going to take this pawn and just open up the avalanche onto black? And white makes a couple of preparation moves. h5, h4 is played because it's two grandmasters. And Garry plays bishop to e7. Jordan plays queen e3, queen c5. Of course, no queen trade because you'd like to create an attack. The queen deflected this queen off and wants to go to g7, so Garry plays this. And now that the king has moved onto the line of attack of this rook, folks, well, we open everything up. And after fe6, the queen infiltrates. Queen comes back to e5. But Jordan finds a very nice idea here. He brings this rook up and over, like this. And now his threat is not so clear, because everything is kind of covered, right? Wrong. There is one thing available here for white, and it's this amazing move, rook to g5. You cannot take, you get mated, and your queen's under pressure. If you play a move like queen d4, which is exactly what Garry did in the game, then Jordan plays this, and Garry resigns, because there is nothing you can do. If you play rook to e7, that prevents one problem, but opens up another one. And if Garry had played instead f5, which was an interesting move, counterattacking the rook, then Jordan would have just taken here, or even taken here all the same. This at least allows the queen to come back, but after a big explosion over here, probably even like this tactic, because this is hanging, Jordan would have went on to win the game anyway. So Jordan opens up the scoring versus Garry. And folks, Garry Kasparov would go on to lose every game besides one. 1 draw, 8 losses on his return. One of those losses was to his world champion companion from about 20-something years ago, and that's Vishy Anand. And it's actually interesting, this was also a Najdorf, but here's the difference. Anand is actively involved in chess. He is actively studying all critical lines and theory. And it's funny because they got the exact same position actually for a very long time. The big difference was that here, these moves didn't happen, right? Like knight c6 happened, and then Jordan pushed for this. The difference here is that Anand played b4 and then went for f5, which is still interesting because, you know, black would like to create counterplay with a5, which is exactly what Garry does. But knight a2 stabilizes the queen side, and bishop e2. It's the same setup, right, that Jordan kind of played, but there was no h4. Actually, black himself played h4, and Anand actually did something super unique. He took on a5 and he did this, and you'll notice like Jordan went for the e6 capture, but Anand is bringing his knight into the game. He plays queen g4, adding a layer of pressure here, and finally he takes. And black here is fine from the computer standpoint. The computer's like 0, 0, 0. but it's such a hard position to play because you have no forward pawn mobility at all. Like, none of your pawns can move. So it's just a matter of what do you do with these 5 pieces? Let me tell you something. You're not going to do anything with this piece. So it's like 4 pieces. So this is what Garry tries. This is what he goes for. Rook c5, f5. And that's a plan because you're trying to open up your bishops. We have bishop to f3, stabilizing the center. Here, Anand could have sacrificed his rook, but the computer should shut up. And, you know, again, Gary's looking for something with the rook. But White's plan is so simple. Just put something on d5. At some point, you can come back to the f file or just go straight down the middle. And literally 2 moves later, Garry resigns. Garry resigns. And, you know, folks, you know, Anand, like, these two are closer in age than anybody else in the tournament is to Garry. It got so bad that Garry lost the game in 7 moves. He played the Queen's Gambit accepted versus Shahryar Mamedyarov. And this move order is a little bit tricky. Knight f3, bishop c4. White leaves this pawn here because if you take it, you can get hit with some nasty tactics on f7. So, for example, bishop takes f7 check. You can't take because you would lose your queen. So knight f6 was played. Here, black has to play bishop b4 check first. Black has to win time, trade off the bishop. But Garry does this, and after queen b3, he's literally lost. There is no way he can guard his pawn, because here, white is going to take and play rook e1, and black just doesn't have time. If black plays d3, which looks like the best move to delay, white will go here, and you don't have a way to protect f7. You just literally don't. If you play bishop e6, take, queen b7, black resigns, because you lose your rook. So Garry lost the game in 7 moves. And, you know, before I jump to highlight some of the other players, what I wanted to say about all this is that while we love watching Garry play from the spectacle side of things, I can't get behind this concept of arguably the greatest chess player who ever lived having half out of 9. Because it's not fair. And I'm not talking that it won't diminish his legacy. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, if to someone it does, they just don't know anything about chess. Like, what are we doing? You understand? This is kind of like in mixed martial arts. This is a sport I follow a lot. It's like when fighters come back when they're older and they just get knocked out because the sport and age is a real factor. So I don't know whether we as spectators need to see Garry play as amazing as it is and as much as we want him to excel. I mean, Father Time is undefeated, right? So anyway, I had really mixed emotions. On the one hand, I want to see Garry play, and on the other hand, it's like, what are we doing here? I mean, the man was the best player in the world for 2 decades. He doesn't need to play chess anymore. Let these guys play chess. Let Garry go live his best life. Anyway, what I'm going to do, because we had 2 days of Blitz, so that's 18 rounds, I'll try to show you a little bit about everybody, and just show you how people did. So, MVL versus Jan Nepomniachtchi. Actually, funny. This is also a Najdorf, but this one with bishop to e2 instead of bishop to g5. Jan was leading the tournament in the rapid and also had a very solid blitz event. E5, knight b3, bishop e7, both sides castle. Now here, the Najdorf is going to be all dependent on the d5 square. Black can create counterplay with b5, a5. Bishop e6, knight d7 is generally the coordination of pieces in the center of the board. It's all about this square. And you'll see that there it is. Here comes black with counterplay. Here comes a4. And what black will sometimes do here is take so that white occupies the center with a pawn and doesn't have that mobility around it, agility. But MVL does something interesting. He plays a5 and he plays d5. And now we have a battle of opposite colored bishops, which is also kind of something to keep an eye on. So bishop d8 is played, looking for the a5 pawn. And let's also not forget, like in all this is 5-minute chess. Rook d1, stabilizing the solid center. Nepo plays rook c5, pressuring everything. We have this nice move, queen b3. Okay, you have a weakness, I have a weakness too. Rook c8, a6. I'm going to utilize my weakness to trade it off and infiltrate with my rook. Now, this is a problem. This is very annoying for black. This is typical Najdorf stuff. This is under fire, and white has gotten to it first. Now, Nepo here goes for tricks. Plays queen b5. Of course, if knight takes d6, it looks like a fork, but then I take this, I attack this, you lose. But what if I take on d6? Looks like the bishop is trapped. The rook is trapped. What if I don't need the rook? Rook takes f6. I would yell if I was in the old apartment, but I have, you know, I have to get sound padding. Gf6 and d6 and d7. And this is a big problem because, I mean, you are just protecting this with the rook, but the bigger problem is it's just on a light square and it will be just there forever. And black is not going to be able to get rid of this. And the worst part is a long time ago, you put your face in the barrel of the gun, you know, like in the movie where you press your head into the gun, like, yeah, do something. Well, that's what you did, but now I have this move, and now I certainly will do something. Because if you play queen takes e2, well, I have queen f7, and it's mate in 1. So that's bad. Don't hang mate in 1. If only it was that easy, right? Queen, it plays g3 to free up the king, and this is completely winning for white. Because all white has to do is get one of these pawns, just infiltrate with the queen. You know, easier said than done, except that it's not, because this is a fork, and Nepo resigned. MVL went on a massive streak. He was like destroying everybody at the end of at the end of things. He was crushing, and he had a really good blitz. But I'll show you all that later. So he did quite well against Nepo in this game. Another game that I wanted to show you is just Vishy doing Vishy things. I showed you a Vishy game versus Kasparov, but let me show you a Vishy game against Kasparov, who is active as a chess player and constantly studying, and you know, one of the best players out of Eastern Europe. So we have a Nimzo Rogozin fusion here. The opening is nothing too inspiring. The players finish their development, the first trade. So Vishy gives the hanging pawn structure to his opponent, DC versus EB. Bishop pair versus not the bishop pair. And now another trade doesn't happen for double the moves. So this is move 13. Vishy blockades the hanging pawns. Korobov, I don't know what Korobov is doing, honestly. Vishy just gets really nice coordination on his pieces. Like, the knights guard each other, the pawn is guarded, this is guarded, and yeah, white is just under pressure. So Vishy's just going to work, doing what super GMs do. This dark squared bishop's doing I don't know what. And finally, on move 26, a pawn trade happened. Now, it's a very tense position because the hanging pawns need to be mobile, and they're not. They're just not, because even though Korobov plays the move c4, that comes with trading off one of the pawns. Excuse me. Now, with this transformation, you have an isolated pawn. An isolated pawn needs more pieces on the board and cannot be blockaded. So more pieces on the board, you trade the pieces. Now we have bishops versus knights. h5, opa, here we go. Knight g6, obviously trying to come with h4, h3, so he makes Korobov himself play h4. And now he brings the rook. We have bishop b3, another trade, and this knight comes back because you're trying to go to f5. The more pieces that come off the board, the bigger of a liability this pawn is going to be. So why would you trade queens? I guess Korobov thought that this endgame is holdable, and he's fine. But watch what Vishy does, because Vishy's got the horses in the back. Rook to b8. Kicks out the bishop, and the rook comes in. King g1, h4. Let's go. And Vishy has arrived with this. And if you take, this pawn dominates the white king along with the rook. You are busted here. So rook e1, he comes back. But now the horses they are angry. You ever seen an angry horse? Yeah, me neither. I don't. Now you say, well, what if you just said he had the horses? Yes, but chess is all about, it's a balancing act. h3. And his pawn makes it down the board, coordinating with the rook and the knight. By the way, remember a long time ago I said I didn't know what Korobov was doing? Yeah, this bishop just danced around and did nothing the whole game. I mean, it's like having a player on your basketball team that just makes no shots, turns the ball over, and, you know, makes bad passes. So, actually, that would be the same thing, I suppose. Now, Vishy got all the way down here, and here, there's this nice little trick. So, if you take the bishop, of course, you lose your knight. So, you give a check. King f2. Now, King g2 was the best move, and I wonder what Korobov missed. Because rook g1 here, I wonder what he thought. Maybe he thought rook g4 was winning. Maybe he thought this was a winning endgame. It's actually not, because your rook is hanging and the pawn is hanging. That's the biggest problem. Like, he might have seen this in his head and was like, this is winning for black. I don't know, but there's rook f7. Instead, he goes to f2, and like I said, it's blitz. So here, Vishy again plays for the rook in 3, even though he actually could go here. And if king g2, there is this move. Again, maybe he thought that he was trapped. He's not. But he plays like this. And what is going on here? This is normally how white's pieces look, but they're black's pieces. And, well, Vishy gets out, gives up his rook, forks. And, yeah, Vishy had an unbelievable event, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. One more game I wanted to show. On the second day, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov popped off. He won like 5 games in a row. Like 6. I mean, he's just so talented. This game was nuts. Just typical Shakhriyar stuff. D4. This is a menacing system. As you take away white's central space and then you build around it. Now, Grishuk closed the center, and that kind of made its way for Shak to just go long. He just puts all his pieces and decides to castle queenside, because that's what Shak does. Grishuk chooses, as you can see, to not castle, to actually manually escort the king over to g1. And in anticipation of Grishuk playing this move, Shak plays a5. Now, that doesn't stop Grishuk at all, because even if this trade were to happen, the position is opening up for white. This is traditional opposite side castling stuff. Grishuk plays bishop g5, attacking the rook. The move f6 actually opens up everything. It opens up this, and even opens up the diagonal over there. So we have a trade and e5. Now, Shak is up a pawn. Yes, but the board is weird. This knight can land on b5. If king h2 and rook b1 comes, you have doubled rooks. It's very unpleasant. So knight a3, knight c5, we have all that. Now here come the knights. But Shak actually says, take me. Take my knight. Because the truth is that even though you get this position, the more pieces I trade from you, the less chance you have of attacking me. e4, d e4, and a pawn break down the middle. Oftentimes an attack on the side of the board is met with a counter strike down the center. Look at that, you're learning. Look at that. Now, he closes everything up, and if you try to play bishop e4, this move just loses. Because I take. That's it. And you can't take back because knight f3 check. Forking the royalty. So knight c3, and finally, e3. And yeah, Shak never really got much attacked at all. He dominated the pace of the game. d2, and all these blitz games end with something really flashy. Bishop takes bishop, king takes, knight e3, and this pawn's about to become a queen. Or I'm just going to back up and mate your king, because you just can't escape. And Grishuk resigned. I mean, Mamedyarov won, like I said. I think on the second day, he literally won 5 straight games, which at this level is disgusting, frankly. It's nasty that you could even do that. But he lost to MDL. MDL is an outstanding blitz player in his own right. I wanted to also show you this game. This is a game between Jordan Van Forest and Jan Krzysztof Duda. This is actually the final game I wanted to show you before we just took a look at the standings and just talked about like what's next. And yeah, these guys really provided us a circus. And I mean that in the nicest of ways. Their 2 blitz games were absolutely ludicrous. So let's take a look at this one. Okay, e4, c5, another knight, or blah, 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 bishop g5. Now, we saw Garry play the move e6, but knight d7 is also a system, bishop c4, and now e6. And now the difference is your knight is actually reinforcing, and if bishop f6, you look at white and you say, what are you doing, moron? Like, what? So, obviously, that doesn't happen. Just kidding, it does. But the difference is, don't think I'm calling Jordan a moron. He did it when prompted. You see, in many of those Neidorf systems, when e6 is played in queen c7, you just take. You only take when prompted because this is a full tempo. And because queen d2 has already been played, you know this is going to happen if you prompt. If you just ignore it, well, then life goes on. But you prompt, and now white has extra time because you made black spend a full move. So b5, bishop b3, b4. Whoa, wait a minute. You're not going to develop any pieces? What do you do to a guy that hasn't developed anything and you've developed everything? Kaboom! Standard Sicilian defense central sacrifice. ED, queen b6, rook e1, and the king's gone running. It's like McGregor when he's biking, you know, in the embedded episodes prior to a fight. And the fight did happen, and I'll probably talk. I'm not going to talk so much about that now, but you got to tune in on Twitch. I haven't been streaming a whole lot recently, but that's where I talk about, you know, mixed martial arts and my interest. Now, the king's gone running. C4. Now, folks, if you are fans of anarchy chess, you know that here black must do this move. The problem is that if you play bc3 in this position, you just straight up get blasted off the board. So Duda clearly, you know, an uncivilized man doesn't take en passant when it's available. And now a nice move, bishop c6. This is a thorn, because if you take, I take with the pawn, I dominate b5. That's where I'm going next. If I had just played knight b5, you would have called me a moron for just doing that, because you would take my knight. So this is a very nice move. And queen f4. So this is on the way. This is on the way. King's gone running. King has gone running to b6. Knight d6. Now, white is still down a piece. White is still down a piece here, make no mistake. But you're not going to really tell me these three pieces scare anybody. Knight d7, knight f7, the game's over. Black is completely busted here. It's like +7. Something completely ludicrous. The rook is hanging, and you are ready. I mean, there's rooks laser beaming. There's a check on the way. You can always throw in c5 even to just sacrifice it and open up lines. Okay, rook g8. Now, how do you win this game? You win this game by playing this move, queen f5, because you want to play the move rook to e6 and pin. You also want queen h7 in some situations, right? So he plays knight c5, and here queen h7 attacks the rook. I mean, there's just nothing you can do. The rook is gone. However, here there is the absolutely savage computer move, knight to d8. And if, for example, something like queen f6, looking for a queen trade, rook e6. Wait, what? Knight take queen b5. And anywhere the king goes, it's mate. That is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I hate computers, except this one because I record everything on it. Instead of that, Jordan played this move. And Duda's like, bro, just take my rook. I don't even need it. But the thing is, if you take the rook, it's actually too dangerous, because there's queen g6, king a1, knight b3, and you get mated yourself by the rook in the corner. So Jordan has to play knight to e5, hitting this first, not letting it go over here. So of course Duda plays this move. But now he takes on g8, queen f5, king c1. Wait a second. So in this position, you can do, you shouldn't go here, you get mated. You shouldn't go here, you lose your rook. If you block, then you lose this. But after king c1, this obviously doesn't work because you're not in the corner anymore. But how do you stop mate? And also, how do you stop this, or this mate? You don't. It's unstoppable. You had to go knight d3. And after knight takes d3, you had to trade queens with tempo and win the knight back. That was the way to win this game. But king c1, you can't stop anything. Rook d3 to block. Queen f2. Queen c2 is mate. You have no checks. Knight d7, I take. Or, as in the game, the fancier move, knight d7, king a5. Absolutely savage walking of the king to a5, and the game is over, and Duda wins. Oh boy. Oh boy. I told you we would end on a very exciting note. Now, how did this tournament finish? This was absolutely legendary. Folks, this is from Chess24. It's a pretty massive, so let me just make that as big as possible. You're not going to see my face. You can pause here if you'd like. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So MVL wins. MVL actually made a massive comeback in the Blitz to get 23 points. Vishy Anand with 21. The dude is 50. 50 years of age, if not 51. I think he's 51 or 50 years old. This guy just got second place. Are you kidding me? Nepo fell a little bit. He had 20 and a half. Our boy Anish, bless up. We know we love Anish here. And Garry did beat Jordan. That was his one win, and then he made some draws. And, Well, my point earlier stands about Garry. Let me know what you all think in the comments below about all that, about Garry coming back and whether you like it or not. And the next thing, folks, on this channel is going to be the World Cup and me soundproofing this place. And if you have any tips on soundproofing, feel free to send me an email. My email is on my profile. It's my business email. Or write it in the comments, like the best ways to insulate, whether it's a carpet or good soundproofing wall. Or I am open to suggestions, and I will see you in the next video.